WBCL Fort Wayne at 90.3 FM. WBCY Archbold at 89.5 FM. WBCJ Spencerville at 88.1 FM. WCVM Brunson at 94.7 FM. WBCW Upland at 89.7 FM. And on the World Wide Web at WBCL.org. The radio ministry of Taylor University.
Good morning on this Tuesday. I'm Lynn Ford. What a joy to spend this hour with you on a mid-morning show that, based on previous conversations with Dr. Carl Myers, will be an aha godsend for so many of you. There's a critical link between vision and learning, but the vision component includes more than just being able to see the letters, the words, or the numbers, which explains why your son or daughter may continue to struggle in school in spite of hours of extra study time, tutors, repetitive reviewing, and every other tool that you've tried. If the just completed school year for your child included struggles with reading, with comprehending and learning, perhaps with the possibility of ADD mentioned, then they just might need to visit an optometrist. But not just any optometrist. No, what they need is someone who specializes in vision problems which interfere with reading and learning, like today's mid-morning guest, developmental optometrist Dr. Carl Myers. Dr. Myers is one of only 7 fellows of the College of Optometrists in Vision Development in Indiana, and the only certified fellow in Northeast Indiana. Dr. Myers practices in Fort Wayne. His number is 497-7973. We've linked to his website from the weekly schedule page, and on our Facebook page, you'll find some videos of the treatments that Dr. Myers offers in helping with vision issues. You can ask your questions the entire hour, 260-745-9090, mid-morning live at WBCL.org, and on our Facebook page. Good morning, Dr. Carl Myers. Thanks for being with us.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here.
And kudos to your wife for picking out your shirt and tie. Really, really nice.
I'm sure she's listening, and she'll be very excited to hear that.
Beautiful teal, great summer color. So what is a developmental optometrist, and how does it differ from other eye doctors?
A developmental optometrist is an individual who looks at the developmental process in terms of vision. The vision process is not something that we are totally born with. We improve in terms of eye movements, eye alignment, convergence, and teaming, and all sorts of things, not to mention the things like acuity itself develops as we get older. So a developmental optometrist is looking at more than just eyesight, which is being able to read the 20/20 eye chart, but rather looking at the performance of the visual system, because about 80% of what we learn comes through vision. And if vision is not operating optimally, then performance is going to be affected.
We tend to interchange the words eyesight and vision, but based on what you've just said, they're two different things.
Yes, eyesight is simply the clarity of vision, being able to read the eye chart and read, certain, I sometimes joke, eyesight has to do with how little you can see, but rather vision has to do with more how much you can see. Vision is the interpretation of what you are seeing and being able to put it together, and the performance aspects of it.
Summer's just started, so maybe you're listening this morning thinking, wait, let me enjoy summer. Let's not talk about the upcoming school year. But if the just completed school year was a bit of a trial for your kids and you, then now is the time to do something about the upcoming school year. And that would be if your child falls into this category of having vision issues, to be able to do some training that will allow them to have a solid footing starting the fall year. And I think for many of you, having that stressful headache of why aren't things getting better? Homework at night is a time of, crying and complaining and whining, and that's just the parents. So what do we do next? This might be the answer for you. And we'll also talk about how if this was your issue growing up, it may be your issue as an adult, and it can explain a lot of what you've struggled with, as an adult. So I just want to reiterate what Dr. Myers has said. If the eye issues causing learning problems isn't how well your child sees, then what exactly are they? There's something different. And you sort of ran through a list as you were starting this conversation. What is it exactly we're talking about this morning, Dr. Myers?
Well, indeed, it can be a wide variety of things, but some of the more popular things are what we call binocular problems. That just simply means the two eyes not working together as a team. God gave us two eyes, and they work best when they work together. And if they're not working together, they're working actually against each other and causing interference. It may cause print to appear to move on the page as an individual is reading. They may have eye movement problems, where as they go across the line of print, they are losing their place, skipping words, rereading words, skipping lines, having trouble getting back to begin the next line. They may have problems with comprehension that are more in the area of what we call visual perception, which is visualization, is the ability to form that picture in my mind. Because as you read something, you must see what you're reading, or else you're not getting anything out of the story of what you're reading.
And your child may not mention these things to you because they don't know any differently. It's their normal.
That's exactly right. I frequently say to parents, so how do you know you see red the same way I see red? All you know is you see red the same way you've always seen it. And for these children who are struggling with these things, it's just the way life has always been for them.
So letters are missing, and that's just the way that things are. If things flip around, or yes, all of those things is what they know, and so they don't know to say to you, hey, I think there's a problem. I think I should be seeing differently.
That's right. They don't know to say anything to anybody.
Yes. So what are some of the signs that a child might be having these kinds of vision issues? What can parents be watching for?
Well, the first thing is just decreased performance. When a child is not advancing in the reading process, I bring up reading frequently because reading is one of the most complex of visual tasks. But so when reading's not going well, that's a big red flag. But also you may see where they are rubbing the eyes, frequent blinking, closing or covering of an eye, excessive tiredness. They do their near work, be it reading or papers or whatever for the homework, and they just are worn out. Or at the end of the school day, of course, where they've been doing this work all day long, they're just worn out at the end of the day. And so those are some of the main things. There are lots of other things. Motion sickness can be involved with a vision problem. Just a general avoidance whenever a child is just avoiding and not advancing as they should be. Spelling problems also. So
yes, now that kids learn to read much earlier, that's something that starts even prepping for them in kindergarten, as opposed to kindergarten being that sort of socialization. You might find that your kids have done well in the early grades, and then all of a sudden, things change for them. And there was more of a marker, like I said, when kids were doing more interactive social things and learning colors and those sorts of things in kindergarten, where you might say when they got to second grade or first grade when they were starting to learn, then you would notice these kinds of issues showing up. They weren't doing well. But now that happens in kindergarten, it may show up that early.
It may certainly. And you brought up an important point. When the child may do relatively well in the early grades, kindergarten, first grade, but then as the print gets smaller, as they go on in school, as the print gets smaller, so do all the vision problems that they may be having are just exacerbated, made worse. And so when the print is small, in fact, there are a couple of conditions where that is very much the case. Their print may appear to be moving on the page when it's a little smaller. And of course, as we go further too, they take away the pictures, the illustrations. And so now the child can no longer make up the story as they go, but rather they have to get their own picture out of the story.
Different kind of thinking's involved, more abstract thinking. And so when you're starting to do that.
Absolutely, yes. They have to be able to infer from what the story says. And there's more and more advanced things going on all the way around.
260-745-9090, 260-745-9090. Email is midmorninglive@wbcl.org, and Facebook is another way to ask your questions of Dr. Carl Myers. And if you're not sure that you have the right question for the topic, ask it anyway, because this is new information for so many that are listening this morning. I'm not surprised every time we have you on that we get calls from people or Facebook or emails from people saying, I didn't know this, but it explains so much. It's the answer they've been looking for. How do you treat, or first of all, how do you diagnose, and then how do you treat these vision problems?
Well, indeed, the first step is diagnosis. We do things in our office in a step-by-step manner. After we do a very thorough vision evaluation, looking at a whole variety of things that I won't go into right now, we then are bringing them back frequently for what we call our second tier of testing, which is where we will do some standardized tests, age-normalized standardized tests that allow us to compare the performance of the individual with others of their age. For example, how quickly and accurately they're able to move their eyes in the reading process. We have one test, in fact, where we hook them up to a computer, and the computer has some little goggles that have sensors that monitors the number of eye movements they're making, the number of regressions or backwards eye movements they're making, how much they're taking in per eye movement, a span of recognition, the duration of fixation, how long they're staying fixed at each spot. And then it also gives them a little comprehension test when they're all done to see whether they actually got anything out of it. And all of those various subcategories of or eye movements that are involved in the reading process are age normalized. So we can begin to say, all right, they're making far more eye movements than the average person, but they're going faster in their eye movements. And their comprehension's not so good, perhaps because they've gone so fast they've skipped over information and so forth. And so that's one test, but there are probably about 15 or so different tests that we do routinely, and then probably about another 15 or so that we bring in as needed to really identify what's going on. Of course, we start with a good history. We get the information from the patient or the parents and as to what's going on, what the basic problems are, and then that directs us in our test selection.
Is part of your job also educating the educators to know that this could be the potential issue? Because if a child is having trouble staying focused, then they may be antsy in their chair and maybe disruptive with other students. And so you might say, well, this kid, has ADD, or this kid, is a kinesthetic learner and just needs more activity, rather than this kid has vision issues. So we start with that. Yes, indeed. One of our roles is to get the word out into the educators' hands. I do in-services for various school systems fairly frequently, and I'm always available to come out and speak with them. And it's always, when I get done with the presentation that I have, it's amazing the number of teachers who come up and say, why were we never taught this in our education? Yes. Why didn't they ever teach us this in our college courses and so forth? And I can think of 6 kids right now in my classroom that have this problem. And because the standard thought is that, vision, as long as the school nurse said they passed their vision screening, then everything must be okay. And again, that's more of an eyesight sort of screening, and there may be lots of things going on. So yes, indeed. And indeed, as you brought up the attention issues, when we have a child who is unable to sit still, frequently there are some visual components with that. Whenever an individual is frustrated, they tend to be rather wiggly in their chairs. And when they're comfortable and if they say, hey, this math page is easy, I'll just sit here and do it. But if they're frustrated, they're playing with their hair, they're wiggling around. They're talking. They're looking at their neighbor's page. They're doing all sorts of things. And
And it's just very hard for them to sit still. And indeed, there are what are known as primitive reflexes. One of the reflexes, called the spinal galant reflex, if it is present, makes it very difficult for the child to even sit still because of the stimulation they get on the base of their spine as they sit. And that can be the primitive reflexes, if they are retained. They're supposed to go away in the first year or so of life. They're present prior to birth, prenatal. And if they have not become integrated into the higher level gross motor and fine motor and the finest of motor, ocular motor, then if they're still operating with primitive reflex activities, then it does affect their performance just about across the board.
That's fascinating. This is the first time you've brought that up, and you've been here numerous times. Learned something new today. And we focus on behavior in a classroom because we need to, because there's, 30 kids that are going to school to learn something, and one is disruptive. We want to, sort of shut that down so that things run a little more smoothly. But what we also want to do is get to the cause so that we can address it there. That's and right. Fix the problem at the root source. 260-745-9090 is our number, 260-745-9090. Email midmorninglive@wbcl.org and Facebook, too, as you're asking your questions this morning of developmental optometrist Dr. Carl Myers. WBCL is able to encourage your heart thanks to the area businesses that team with you to support us, like Moose Lake Christian Craft Village north of Fort Wayne in Leato, an 1800s village providing lake activities, Amish General Store, with Rise and Rolls, I might add, restaurant, and more. Find out more on our business partners page at WBCL.org. Let's go to the phones and take your questions, starting with Sherry. One line's open at 260-745-9090. Sherry, good morning. You're on the air. What would you like to ask Dr. Carl Myers?
I had a question about eyes tracking together. So I'm 43 years old, and I've had issues, not issues where I've ever needed a patch or anything like that, but my eyes aren't following in the same direction. Like, I don't know, there's one of the tests they do, and it makes it pretty obvious in the eye doctor office that that's an issue for you. And my son was with me, who's a sixth grader, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, Mom, you should see your eyes." And so anyhow, I asked the doctor what I can do about that, and he basically told me that I'm too old to do anything about it. So I wanted to see if your doctor agrees with that.
Well, obviously, I don't know the specific diagnosis, but I can take a pretty good guess. I'm going to guess it's called convergence insufficiency. But going on from there, you're never too old. Vision is again, developed sense and a learned sense, and therefore, if it's too late to stop learning at some point, then we should stop sending kids to school at a certain point in life. We do. They graduate, but we all should be and are lifelong learners. But the visual process and the coordination of the eyes, the tracking of the eyes, is something that is very effectively treated really at any age. And it's a misnomer that some eye doctors do put out, that if we don't catch things by a certain age, that it is too late. And that came from research that was done many years back with Hubel and Wiesel, who talked about what they call critical periods, and we now know that the concept of critical periods is not correct. And in fact, Hubel of that team actually has come out and recanted his own research. And this is a Nobel Prize winner who has said that we were wrong. And so it is never too late. It is always better to catch it early, obviously, but it is never too late.
Sherry, I'm going to ask Dr. Myers if he would sort of walk through what's the treatment for that? What would it look like? How do you retrain for the vision component?
Okay. Well, once we've identified the problem, let's say it is a convergence problem, it is really a matter of eye control. We are going to start out by working with each eye individually and its movements and its accuracy of movement, and then we'll start to work with the two eyes together, putting them together as a team, as they need to be, and that will involve a variety of different modalities. It could be things like changing the focus from distance to near, because as we go to the distance, our eyes are pretty much straight ahead, but when we look up close, the eyes need to converge and turn in. So we begin to train that flexibility of the visual system. It may involve working with some computer programs that have a setup where one eye sees one part of the target, another eye sees the other part, and we can then begin to separate those or bring them closer together to allow the individual to be working at an area where they are using the eyes together, and then work on expanding that range of usable binocular vision. That's kind of an oversimplification, but there are a lot of different approaches, and it is not a quick fix. It is something like any therapy, does take time.
Sherry, there's your answer.
All right. Thank you very much.
You're most welcome. Thanks for calling us.
Bye-bye.
We've linked to Dr. Myers' website for Indiana Vision Development in Fort Wayne, so you can find out more there. A couple of workshops coming up if you'd like to get more instruction as to what Dr. Myers is talking about this morning. One is the 14th of June, the other is the 12th of July, and those details are on his website as well. 260-745-9090, 260-745-9090. Email midmorninglive@wbcl.org, and Facebook too for your questions. Back to the phones we go, where Kim has a question. Kim, good morning. Thanks for calling us. What would you like to ask Dr. Myers?
Good morning. I guess I want to know, I have two children. My son is 20, and he has 20/20 vision, but he was diagnosed with ADHD when he was in school and struggled. My daughter is 15, has a very strong prescription, has never had any ADHD problems, but she struggles. They both struggle with math, science, and English. And I didn't know if there was a correlation between the eyesight and this learning, or if there's something I should do.
Yes, well, 80% of learning does come through vision. And so, as we noted earlier, any breakdown in the visual process is going to affect the performance of the individual and their ability to learn and their desire to learn, because we all begin to want to give up when we're not successful. And so, yes, these problems are pretty much across the board, in the sense that it's not just individuals who have attention problems that have difficulties with performance, with reading and learning, but it's really all walks of life, and those who need glasses to see well and those who don't. In fact, the majority of the individuals we work with probably don't need any glasses to see more clearly. They may need glasses to see more efficiently. We do lots of times use lenses to relieve the stress on the visual system. But
what it might do for you, Kim, is to rule out if there's a vision issue, because your son has 20/20 eyesight, so he's seeing well, but it may still be a vision problem, which is how the eyes work. And that's different from how he's actually seeing. I share this story whenever Dr. Myers is on, because we had a family experience with that. In fact, two family members, but one was one of my nephews who struggled in school. Smart kid, but just really struggled. And he had tutors, and his parents worked with him, and that learning did not budge for him. And it was so hard for him. As a first grader, he just felt stupid, and he knew that he wasn't, but he wasn't doing well in school, and his parents were frustrated because they were doing all they knew to do, and finally went in and had him tested, and he had a vision issue, and so went through the therapy with that. He was held back a year because it was too late for him to catch up, but that made the difference for him to be able to actually learn, because there was a physiological thing in the way that his eyes were seeing. And for him, it was, I'm not stupid. There's a reason why I can't do well in spelling, why I'm having trouble with math. And for his parents, too, for them it was, oh, my goodness, we've been trying to help him, and we've tried everything we knew, but the answer was something totally different.
And that's it. Both my children love to read, and they retain everything they read, but they don't do well when it comes to the actual work. And it's really just a mind-blowing thing learning this.
Well, and the thing for you, again, it may be that, they are tested and you find, okay, that isn't the issue. But for you as a mom being a detective, you've ruled out one more thing. but it could be the problem. And once you know what the problem is, then you can figure out what's the treatment for it. So that might be something that would be helpful for your kids.
Awesome. Now, will you have Dr. Meyer's information on your website?
Yes, we've linked to his website from our weekly schedule page, but I'll tell you, it's Indiana Vision Development in Fort Wayne, and that number is 497-7973. But again, you can link to their site from our weekly schedule page.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Pleasure. Thanks for calling us, Kim. 260-745-9090, 260-745-9090. Email is midmorninglive@wbcl.org. Facebook as well, and we're talking today with developmental optometrist Dr. Carl Myers, and it's a different way of looking at vision and eyesight, but focusing on vision that you may be hearing for the first time this morning. And if you've got a question for Dr. Myers, now's the time to ask it. In fact, phone lines and email and Facebook are available all hour long. Midmorning Live at WBCL.org. Again, our number is 260-745-9090. It's 10:26. You're listening to Mid-Morning. I'm Lynn Ford. Dr. Myers, the kinds of testing that you do as a developmental optometrist are not the kinds of tests that regular optometrists can do. It's a specialty, correct?
Yes, I start out doing really all the tests that the most optometrists and ophthalmologists are doing. However, we go beyond that, and that is why it frequently takes a second visit, a second tier of testing. That is where we go into the more targeted specialty testing, looking at things like their eye movements or their eye teaming and so forth. So yes, we're doing basically everything that the
and I point that out because if you go to your eye doctor and say, hey, I was listening to Mid-Morning and I want you to do these tests for my son or daughter because they're struggling in school, your eye doctor may not be familiar with that or say, well, I don't do that. And that's not because he's not trained. He's just not trained in this area.
That's right. So every optometrist is trained in the area, or at least receives a basic level of training in the area of developmental vision in our schooling, but not a large number of us have gone on to specialize in this area. I mean, there are others that specialize in contact lenses or in ocular disease and so forth. But this area of developmental functional vision care is the area of my specialty.
So a lazy eye or crossed eyes, those are things that a regular eye doctor, of course, would know about. Do they do treatment for that, or is that something that really you need a developmental optometrist to help you get the best and the most effective treatment?
Yes, indeed. Certainly those things are easily identified. Everybody can see a crossed eye pretty well, and everybody recognizes when one eye is not seen nearly as well as the other. But most optometrists do not offer any real treatment for that, and that is what we specialize in, is working with getting those two eyes working together. And when there is a crossed eye, I would say, I don't know what percentage, I want to say 99% of the time does not require any kind of surgical intervention. Yet that is the most common approach that most eye doctors think of, is that, well, we better, and parents for that matter, we better go have this eye straightened out. Well, when they do eye surgery, they are actually cutting muscles and reattaching them, and the intricacies of the 6 different muscles that are attached to each eye don't allow for an absolute functional cure. That is to say, the eyes may look cosmetically better, but they still don't have the binocular vision, the stereopsis ability to judge well, and they're still probably going to be suppressing one eye or ignoring and tuning it out, and consequently the amblyopia or lazy eye part of things is generally not being addressed at all. With that, they still have an eye that doesn't see real well. And so approaching it from more the developmental and functional standpoint that we do, again, as I said earlier, it does take time, but it gives us an actual functional cure. We have individuals who end up being able to have stereopsis or high level depth perception, and they have a more equal sharpness of vision, visual acuity with each eye.
That's fascinating, because what you're saying is surgery can fix it so that your eye is looking straight or it's not crossed, but you've robbed your eye of the full range of muscle movement that allows the eye to not only see but have good vision as well.
Yes, they may still have a fairly full range of motion, but the two eyes may move differently from each other. The brain sends the signal to the muscles, and because one muscle now is somewhat maybe shorter than what it used to be, it pulls harder, and so they may have relatively straight-looking eyes and what we call primary gaze, which is straight ahead, but you ask them to look to the left or to the right or up or down, then all of a sudden we get eyes which are kind of doing different things because the muscles are pulling differently on different fields of gaze. So when you look to your left or you look to your right, the muscle pulls differently than what it does when you're looking straight.
Yes.
And they can only really try to straighten things when you're looking straight ahead.
Thanks for clarifying. Let's go back to the phone lines. Our phone lines are filled, but if you'd like to ask a question, email is a quick way to do that. Midmorning Live at WBCL.org and Facebook, too. Let's start with Daryl. Daryl, good morning. You're on the air. What would you like to ask Dr. Myers?
Yes, I was born with scars on my retina, and I was wondering if there was anything that I could do or could be done for that.
Daryl, because you have scars on your retina, does that in any way negatively impact your vision and your sight?
Well, I have no depth or very little depth perception.
And
it's
how old?
Hard for me to get two lines to meet.
Okay. And how old are you, Daryl?
I'm 64.
All right. I was just asking in terms of, is it ever too late to do surgery to change things? So, Dr. Myers?
Yes, first of all, scars on the retina and those sorts of things are not things that vision therapy and the work that I do will directly take care of. But when you say that you have trouble getting two lines to meet, that tells me that still there is a basic binocular issue going on, or it could be the puckering of the retina, the fact that when we have scar tissue, it's not a particularly smooth surface. And so if it's a matter of the alignment of the eyes, yes, that's something very easily that we can work with. If it's a matter that we're getting puckering of the retina and some wrinkles, so to speak, on the back of the eye, that is something that we would have limited, perhaps, or if even any success with.
So is it even worth pursuing, or is at this point in time the chances of being able to have any benefit from the therapy is really close to nil, that you would invest time and money in that?
I think it'd be worth having an evaluation to determine whether it is a matter of eye alignment and binocular function, and that is then we would be able to tell you at that point whether this is worth pursuing further, or whether this is something that perhaps is not, or perhaps another specialty. There is what is known are low vision specialists, who are individuals, optometrists that work particularly with individuals who perhaps have things like scars in certain parts of the eye and so forth that are affecting their eyesight in a great way, and they can help maximize what is there. They can fit special aids. Sometimes you see individuals have little telescopes sticking out of their glasses if we have a severely limited eyesight. So there are other specialists that may be of help here. But I think a good starting point, when you said that you have trouble getting two lines to meet, that says, that is a binocular problem. That is two eyes that aren't working together.
And how does that issue impact day-to-day life? Give us an example of that, whether it's in driving or stepping off a curb, or how would that impact somebody?
Well, it depends, I guess, the severity of the issue and the exactly where, when you mention two lines like coming together, it just says that his depth perception probably is not particularly good. Have a hard time judging, where, when we're parking a car, where's your front bumper at? And it would affect performance in sports, catching a ball, batting a ball, that sort of thing. And all those things that require good stereopsis or having two eyes to judge where things are out in space.
Stereopsis sounds like a dinosaur.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, Hubble and Weasel sounded like a Vegas act to me.
Okay.
But they're Nobel Prize winners. Can't go by the names. Back to the phones we go where Joy has a question. Joy, thanks for calling. What would you like to ask Dr. Carl Myers?
My question is there anything that can be done for color blindness at all? I have two grandsons that are both very, very colorblind. One's 4 and one's 7. With draw this to the green box and that to the red box, they don't see either one. Is there anything that can be done for color blindness?
Joy, did you have another question? Because I'll take you off the air so you can listen to the answer on your radio.
Nope, that's the only one.
Very good. Thanks for calling.
Thanks. Yep.
Bye-bye.
Okay, again, color perception is something that is genetically determined and color perception problems are far more common in males than females.
I was going to ask you that. I don't know that I've ever met a woman who's colorblind. I'm sure they're out there.
Yeah, there aren't very many. I don't know. I may have seen one in my career so far. Anyway, the short answer, because it's a genetic issue, there's really not a lot that can be done. There has been some research done, and some studies have shown that the use of specific, like red contact lenses, they called the X-chrome lens, I think it's called, can enhance color perception problems, or not, doesn't enhance the problem, it enhances the ability to work around the problem and so forth. And that would be something that a contact lens expert would be more able to answer and so forth. But even then, my understanding is that no, there's not a whole lot that can be done because it is a genetic problem, and what we do in our work is not obviously changing genetics.
Can you give us a color blindness 101 course? Like, what's going on in the eyes that somebody's colorblind?
Well, first of all, it is a little bit of a misnomer to say color blindness, but we all say it, even I say it. It's more color deficient. It is more a matter that they just don't see colors relative to each other, as they confuse colors, and it's harder for them to tell the difference between certain colors. They don't see in black and white. But the reason for this is there are two basic types of photoreceptors in the retina, the rods and the cones. The cones are the ones that are responsible for color perception, and there can be a variety of different abnormalities, so to speak, of the cones, and their distribution across the retina and so forth can be out of the ordinary. So it's just mainly the thing to keep in mind is that they just have a hard time sometimes telling the differences between colors. So when I come across a particular little boy in the office that may have some color perception problems, I always kind of joke, when you grow up and your wife tells you to wear a certain color, don't argue with her. Just let them.
Just do it.
Just do it.
It is 10:39. You're listening to Mid Morning. I'm Lynn Ford. Our guest today is developmental optometrist Dr. Carl Myers, and your vision problem or your child's vision problem, not eyesight, but vision, can be causing difficulty in learning. And he's answering those questions this morning. Mid-Morning Live at WBCL.org, Facebook as well. And our phone number is 260-745-9090. Back to the phones we go, where Jennifer has a question. Jennifer, thanks for calling us. What's your question for Dr. Myers?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. I'm a parent of a child who is dyslexic, and we've done various treatments kind of with him, and he's struggled to learn to read. We did a kind of analysis a few years ago that worked with balancing like both sides of his brain, and the findings of that was that he was dominant in one eye vision and then dominant on the opposite in what he could hear. And I'm just wondering if the doctor uses any of that stuff. I'm also wondering, where does insurance cover this? Your medical insurance, going through a program like this.
And Jennifer, how old is your son right now?
He's almost 11.
Almost 11.
And then my other question would be, we're like an hour away from Fort Wayne. Is there a list that says where doctors who specialize in this are located at?
Sure. I'll tell you what, I'm going to put you on hold. If you don't mind, you can listen to Dr. Myers' answer, and then I'll bring you back on in case you have any other questions as he's responding, all right?
Okay, thank you.
Very good. All right, let's deal with dyslexia first.
Okay, first of all, dyslexia certainly is one of those conditions that has different meanings depending who you're speaking with.
Okay.
I like to always point out that I think if you look up dyslexia in the dictionary, it simply just means the inability to make meaning of print. So that would mean that anyone who can read at all isn't dyslexic. Now, that's a very obviously broad definition. But educators will explain it a little differently than psychologists, who will just explain it a little bit differently than people like myself.
So how do you, as a developmental optometrist, define dyslexia?
Well, I really don't. We don't treat dyslexia. What we treat are the various visual components of it. If I have in my office a list of characteristics which go along typically with dyslexia, those are such things as we always think of the letter reversals, word reversals, but they can also be handwriting problems and so forth. So, for example, a handwriting problem does come under the heading of dyslexia. However, it also can very much and very frequently is a visual issue in the sense that they have some fine motor control issues, the eye-hand coordination required for reading, or for writing and for reading. But anyway, so the various aspects, this list has a list of various things that are associated with dyslexia versus those that are associated with visual problems. And I don't have the numbers in my hip pocket, but I will say that about 3/4 of the things which are, and there are about 25 or 30 different things on this list, about 3/4 of them can have vision as the root of the problem. And so we don't go into the situation saying we're treating the dyslexia, but rather we're going to treat the underlying issues that somehow are masking, showing up and being diagnosed as. It's very frequent when we have conditions like dyslexia and ADD and ADHD and so forth. Undiagnosed vision problems very frequently masquerade as those sorts of things.
Okay, so let me put you on the spot for Jennifer. If this were your grandson, if Jennifer's 11-year-old was your grandson, what would you do? What would be your next step? Would you start with a developmental optometrist? Would you get a second diagnosis for the dyslexia? What's the process here?
I would certainly start with a good developmental vision evaluation to see what is going on, at least visually, and we can perhaps rule out that as a problem. But again, vision plays a role in a large proportion of the various aspects that go along typically with the diagnosis of dyslexia. So that would be a good starting point.
Okay.
And from there, if we determine that vision is not really involved here, then we go on to other treatments. And that brings up, I'm just thinking in my own mind, what other treatments?
Where do you go next? Yes.
Where do you go next? And that's one of the problems that frequently is out there. A psychologist or the testing at school and so forth, they are very good at identifying that the individual has a weakness in this area. However, if you read their reports, they never come up with, what are we going to do about it? They just simply identify the fact that the child struggles with laterality and directionality, which is left-right awareness and so forth. So what are you going to do about it? We in our office go forward with therapy to actually build on those skills so that the child does have and develops a good left-right awareness and so forth.
Insurance, does it cover the kind of testing that you do?
The insurance the testing we do is frequently covered by insurance. Of course, a good number of people have vision insurance, and that frequently will cover the initial evaluation in our office. The second tier of testing then sometimes goes on to a major medical insurance. The therapy, should we determine that is advised, also comes under major medical when it is covered. It is hard to know with the changing insurance climate we have out there that exactly what and when things will be covered, but our experience in the office has been, I think, around 60% of our patients are getting coverage through their major medical. The therapy comes under major medical. It is not does not come under vision insurance because we are rehabilitating a system of the body, and it's not unlike rehabilitating a weak leg after a stroke.
Like physical therapy.
It's similar. It is a therapy, physical, speech, occupational, yes.
And then is there a website to go to find the closest developmental optometrist to somebody?
Yes. There are two websites I'll give you. One is covd.org. That's the College of Optometrists and Vision Development. The other one is oepf.org. That's the Optometric Extension Program Foundation. Both of them have doctor locators. You can put in your zip code, and it will tell you where you can find doctors nearby. You mentioned you're about an hour away. I will say that we have a good number of our patients, probably about half of our patients, at least a fourth, are coming an hour or more to see us because I am the only one in Northeast Indiana or Northwest Ohio that is a certified fellow of the College of Optometrists and Vision Development, which simply means that I've gone on and become more knowledgeable with a lot of continuing education.
I was going to say a know-it-all, but I like the way that you say it. Yeah. And you're only one of 7 in the state of Indiana. Let's bring Jennifer back on to see if she has any other additional questions. Jennifer, any more questions, or did you get your answers?
Just one last question I would ask is that so if we brought him in and he had an evaluation done and they said, yes, it's a vision issue, what would therapy look like? How, many times a week does he recommend coming in? Does it vary, I guess, based on the symptoms? Sure. I will tell you that when we had a vision analysis done, it was like his eye coordination and then his tracking, and it was crazy. I mean, his eyes at that time didn't work together. This was several years ago, and he has improved some, and we've worked with a reading specialist that's helped him some with that, but he's still very much, it's his least favorite thing to do.
That's an important piece of information you just shared. Dr. Myers?
Yeah, you'd asked what therapy looks like. Typically, when we begin to work with someone in our office, it is usually once a week coming to our office, and each session is about an hour long, 50 minutes. And then we also ask that they do about 20 minutes of home activities 5 times a week. So we give usually 3 or so activities that they will work with at home that are supporting what we're doing in the office. And I sometimes make the analogy of piano lessons. It's hard to get better if you only go to the lesson and you don't do your practice at home. So, yeah.
And Jennifer, we've linked to Dr. Myers' website, and you can see some of the therapies that they're offering there as well, and you can ask questions too. So thanks for calling.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Appreciate that. Dr. Carl Myers is our guest this morning, and he's answering your questions about vision. We'll take Sharon's phone call, and that'll be it for the phone calls. We'll head to Facebook, grab some there, and then also some email questions this morning. Sharon, you've been to a patient holding. Thank you. What would you like to ask Dr. Myers?
Several years ago, My sister signed up for a program that she got through the mail that said that it could help improve your vision. And what it was a series of exercises that they would send her do these exercises for so long, and then when she had completed that part of the program, then they would send her another set of exercises to do. And she said she did see improvement in her vision, and I was wondering how much of this is real as far as science-based and how much of it is a way to get our money.
And Sharon, when you said it improved her vision, are you talking eyesight in terms of, how far away she can see, or
Yes,
her vision?
yes.
Okay, so eyesight is
the
different.
The premise behind it was that a lot of vision problems are related to the muscles holding the eye.
Mm-hmm. All right. Legitimate question, Sharon. Thank you so much for asking it. Dr. Myers?
You're welcome.
Yes, indeed, there are such programs that have been out there through the years and are still out there. One big difference in what we do in the office, a professional office-based program, is that we have available to us, number one, lenses and prisms that allow us to help the eyes. That they're just aids that we use, not that they're wearing glasses, but a prism would allow them perhaps to have the eyes in a slightly deviated or out of alignment position, and at the same time they begin to see, this is what it looks like when two eyes are working together. And then we gradually reduce that prism to help the brain begin to do more of the work on its own. And any kind of mail order or computer-based only program is going to miss out on that. And it's also going to miss out on me, because I'm able to make calls at the line of scrimmage when I see changes occurring, because that's a part of our therapy program. Also, we're doing progress evaluations to see how things are coming, and we make changes in our program as it goes. And it's not a cookie cutter program that everybody goes through this and then this and then this and then this. So as for research, you asked, yes, there are tons of research studies that have investigated various aspects of this. Several of them are on our website. Again, if you delve into that, you'll find the references for a lot of them. Certainly, this is a very legitimate science, but there are programs out there. I remember I thought when you first started talking, we're going to talk to us a little bit about the pinhole glasses. They used to have this thing where you'd get these little glasses, had nothing but a bunch of little pinholes in it, and that did help you see more clearly, but that's not what you're talking about. But that was one of those kind of perhaps cash-grabbing schemes, but that is not at all what we are about.
Well, yours is really dealing with the physiology, that you're looking at what's happening in the eye, and there's a diagnosis being made, as opposed to, as you called it, cookie cutter, one size fits all. You do this and it's going to fix whatever your issue is. So,
right. We are actually working at the level of the brain.
Yes.
We're not really working with eyeballs. We're working with the neural connections that are made. And so when we go in and work, and because what we're looking at is development again, it's learning. And learning, when you learn your multiplication tables, you have built new neural connections, new synapses, and we are working at that same level in terms of helping the brain to better control the eyes and to better use them as a team and so forth.
Russell wants to know, he had surgery on his lazy eye almost 20 years ago, and he says it's a little bit better, but he still has some problems with depth perception, and he's still right eye dominant. Anything at this point in time for him that could improve?
Yes, we can and do work with individuals post-surgical.
Even 20 years post-surgery?
Yes, I have had patients that have been that, and I'm sure more. It is, again, always best to catch people before they have the surgery, but and as I said earlier in our conversation, the surgery usually does not correct really the issues. He's still got an eye that doesn't see as well. He still has two eyes that aren't working together. So I just kind of reiterate what I said earlier, kind of like, see, I told you. But yes, there is help for these individuals. It is always more challenging, but that does not make it impossible to work with.
Cheryl wants to know if what you do, Dr. Myers, can help somebody with dry macular degeneration. Her mother-in-law's vision is deteriorating rapidly.
No, what I do does not help with that at all. That is something that you need to be under the care of a medically based optometrist or ophthalmologist, and the actual visual function would be someone that low vision specialist who I mentioned earlier would be the best person suited to help with.
Last question in the last minute. What you do, can it help somebody who's had a stroke or a head injury?
Yes, indeed. Again, because we are working at the level of the brain, we do work with a lot of individuals who have had concussions, strokes, or other kinds of acquired brain injury. And as I said earlier, not only is 80% of learning visual, but it turns out that 80% of the brain has been estimated is involved in the visual process in one way or another. And therefore, that means there's only 20% of the brain that you could have an injury and not affect vision somewhere, somehow. And once a neuron is killed off, it's not going to regenerate. But the synapses, the neural connections, we can build new synapses. We can build, so it's very common when an individual has had perhaps a concussion or has had a stroke, they've lost function in certain areas, but we are able to kind of build new bridges so that they're able to use the what they have left more efficiently. So yes.
I'm squeezing in one more question. You can give a yes or no answer. For an athlete, somebody who wants to improve their performance, they don't know that they have a vision problem. If they would come to you for a test, could it possibly help them be a better athlete?
Yes, indeed. We work with, I don't so much work with a lot of athletes, but our profession works with a lot of professional athletes. And yes.
Thank you. Dr. Carl Myers has been our guest this morning. He is a developmental optometrist with a practice in Fort Wayne. We've linked to his website if you want to know more about what he's been discussing this morning. 2 free workshops, one's on June 14th, the other July 12th. Those details on his website, which we've linked to from the weekly schedule page. Today's Mid-Morning will be up on the archive, as is true for all mid-mornings. And if you'd like to hear this again, but my guess is you probably know somebody who needs to hear what Dr. Myers has shared this morning, directs them there, because this could be their aha help as well. Tomorrow on Mid-Morning, it's Wednesday, and our Let's Talk question is about vacations. So a favorite place for you, a restful place, a place you'd visit again. And I'll be sharing some of my Israel highlights. Well, they're all highlights, so specific highlights tomorrow on Mid-Morning. Thanks for listening. Ken Church is next on Family Friendly and commercial-free WBCL.
The WBCL Radio Network. WBCL Fort Wayne at 90.3 FM. WBCY Archbold at 89.